Hello and welcome back for another Torah Tuesday. This is the last week in our series on my trip to Egypt, where I'm showing you little video clips that I took in significant places. Today is a bit of a change of pace because it does not have a direct connection to Exodus. It's more of a connection with Genesis 1. I want to introduce you to Egyptian cosmology, that is the way the Egyptians thought about the universe and how it was constructed. And we have a very different way of conceiving of the world than ancient Egyptians did. So what I'm going to show you is a scene inside the tomb of Ramses VI. So this is after the time of the Exodus, but it will give us a window on how they thought about how the world was constructed. So what you're going to see, and I'll show you a few pictures first so that you can appreciate the video. What you're going to see is an image like this one, a more complex image, but this simple one shows you the goddess Nut has arched her body, and you can see stars embedded in her body, and she represents the sky or the vault of the sky. Below her, along the ground, is the god Geb, who represents the earth, and his body is sometimes inscribed with reeds to symbolize fertility. And then between them is the god Shu, S-H-U, who is holding up the sky. And he represents the air. He's actually the father of Nut in the Egyptian pantheon. So what we have in Egypt is a whole pantheon with hierarchies of deities that are related. There's like a dynasty, and they're related by family. And they're often in conflict with one another. And each one is responsible for different aspects of daily life or of the cosmos or of regulating destinies, that sort of thing. So I'm going to take you inside a tomb now so that you can see how important these concepts were, that even in their burial chambers, they would paint them on the walls. Okay, so I'm standing now inside the tomb of Ramses VI in the burial chamber, and it is just incredible. The artwork on the walls is so impossible to capture with just a flat photograph. And so I wanted to show you a video so that you can get a sense for the size of the room and the different dimensions of where the artwork is. But the best part of this room is the ceiling, which is a stylized image of the goddess Nut twice. She's back to back. You can see her head there. She swallows the sun, and now we're seeing this 12 stages of the sun going along her yellow body in the center of the room there. And then she gives birth to the sun in the morning. So that little clip gives you a sense for the idea of the dynamic relationship between Nut, the goddess Nut, and the day and night. So apparently they believed that she swallowed the sun at night, and that's why you couldn't see it at night. And it made its way through her body in 12 different stages, marking the 12 hours of night. And then she gave birth to it, and then it traveled across the sky, and they could see it, and it was daytime. And likewise, the stars were inside of her during the day, and that's why you couldn't see them. And so the next little video clip is going to show you the other side of her body in the tomb. Okay, so now we're looking at the other side, and you can see the stars embedded in her body as she has arched over, like there's lots of stuff going on earth, and there's her feet on the other end of the wall of the ceiling. So it's just massive. It's so hard to capture it on film, but you can see this is back to back two images of the goddess Nut, one representing the day and one representing the night. All right, so how does this help us read the Bible? Well, what is striking to me when I turn back to Genesis 1 is the absence of other deities and the absence of conflict. So Genesis begins, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And notably, the heavens are not personified, and neither is the earth. These are not gods. They're entities other than God or outside of God that God creates. Now the earth was formless and empty, darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And so God proceeds to bring order to creation and to create spaces where humans and animals and plants can flourish. And part of that involves creating a vault or a dome to separate the waters above from the waters below in verse 6. And he calls the vault sky, but again, there's an absence of personification. The sky is not a being in its own right. It is simply a boundary that the waters cannot cross. And also strikingly, on day 4, God makes lights in the vault of the sky. And somebody pointed out to me recently, I hadn't noticed, that it does not call the light sun and moon, but it calls them the greater light and lesser light. I do think this is talking about the sun and the moon, but probably in a context where the surrounding nations worshipped the sun god, it was important not to name the sun because God didn't want his people to be confused and think that it was an actual entity that deserved worship. So the greater light and the lesser light are delegated some kind of authority for marking time and marking seasons and years to bring order to time, but they are not to be worshipped, unlike the gods of Egypt. So I'll show you a couple more pictures here of the goddess Nut, of Geb beneath her, and of Shu holding up the sky. It's just a very different concept of the earth than what we get in the biblical text. The last picture I want to leave you with is a fun one. This is a headrest from the tomb of King Tutankhamun, the boy king, and it's an image of Shu holding up the head of the king. So instead of using pillows, apparently they would sleep on these things, put their head on the headrest. And the god Shu is the one holding up the head of the king, which implies that the head of the king, which is round, represents the sun itself, that Shu is holding up the sun. There are lots of pictures with the god Shu holding up the sun rather than holding up the goddess Nut. So it's really an audacious claim by King Tut that he is the sun. And the pharaohs did refer to themselves in this way as the sun or the son of Re. So the S-U-N or the S-O-N of Re, who is the sun god. So they had a concept that the pharaoh was ruling on behalf of the gods and even embodied divinity in themselves, and therefore took on some of the qualities of the deity that they represented. And so if Pharaoh represented the sun god, then here's Shu holding up his head while he sleeps. Really a fascinating way of thinking about kingship. So I hope this has been helpful. We have such a contrast in the Bible with one supreme deity who creates all things, rules all things. His creation is not born out of conflict. There's no bloody mess. There's no battle. God just speaks and the world comes to be. I hope you enjoyed this. Next week, it will be back to Exodus on our slow trip through the book of Exodus. I am currently revising everything that I've written so far on my Exodus commentary in light of what I learned in Egypt, because I learned so much. So I'm going back through, I've done the first 4 chapters and just kind of tidying things up and tweaking things along the way to reflect what I saw. So we'll dive back in. I think we're in chapter 13 or so, and I'll see you for that next week. Have a great week.